Hi, Nkwo. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The reason why I wanted to bring you on this evening is because to me you are an exemplary brand from a circularity standpoint. I know I've shared a lot of ideas and people are probably thinking, oh, how do I apply this, right? I think you're a great brand to show how this can be applied in a day-to-day, in a Niger context, in a using local materials, in a using local resources context. So over to you.
Okay, hi. Um, so first of all, I'm pleased to be here, and I just want to really talk about principles that you can apply to have a very sort of circular life, not just in terms of what you make, but I feel like if you are circular in the way you think and the way you work and the way you walk, talk, and everything, it makes it a lot easier. So it sort of comes to reason that you would use organic fibers, cottons, things that are grown in Nigeria and that are processed in Nigeria. You use things that you find around you. And one of those things is like secondhand clothing. You know, it's a whole nother story of why we have to have it in our country. But since it's here, it's a challenge, and we can turn that challenge into an opportunity by finding ways to use those materials. And again, you can turn your supply chain into circle by creating communities. So if you use cotton, for example, I have a community of old men who are cotton growers, cotton farmers, and manufacturers and producers and whatever you want to call them. And they're based in Adamawa State, high up in the mountains. They're really shy. They don't like people coming around. But we found a contact. And so because we use this cotton a lot, we keep buying from them, and it's giving them work, and it's helping them have a sustainable community. And so things like that, you can find little silos of people that can maybe crochet or produce coconut shell buttons or anything you can think of that will create work, and that is something that when you use it, the end of life means that it can go back into the ground or it can be reused. I think that it's actually a good idea to think about how you can build your community around that. Um, and so that sort of brings me to the second part of my company, which I feel is very important, and that is my workers. So it's like when you take care of everyone in your little circle, and then they take care of everybody in theirs, and eventually all these circles join up into one great big one, you can just imagine the impact that it has. So where maybe there's a single mother somewhere, she's struggling, and she comes in to work with us, and she's given access to well, she gets finance because she gets paid for what she does, and then she takes it home, and she can look after her children, and they can go to school, and they can look after the little ones who are younger than them, and it just keeps on going. And this is where we have these circles working in circles. So remember that it's not just about creating clothes, you know, that can be used again and again. You have to think about everything. And so the third thing that I find really important is my workspace. If your workers are happy, they're going to produce better. And so I think what I have done is I have created a sort of less formal structure. And here it's like I give my staff a certain amount of freedom to grow and make the job their own. And essentially, if you come to work for me, you have a job for life. So it's me taking care of as many people as I can in my own little way, so that it spreads out in circles and, you know, looks after the wider community. So one of the things that I'm an example of building this community is I have a project called the Nkwo Transform Project, and it's really where I use waste where I transform waste as I transform lives. There's a group of women in an IDP camp in Abuja, and an IDP camp is a place where it's a camp for internally displaced persons. As you all know, or I should think you know, we have an insurgency in the north of the country, and there are like, I think about 4 IDP camps in Abuja. So I went to one of them. The idea was to train probably 2 or 3 women who could come and work with me. And at the end of the day, 10 women signed on to this program. And after 6 weeks, we had finished the teaching. All of them were so brilliant. It's sort of like it's a story, but I'm just going to keep it really short because of time. So just imagine that somebody gives you 3 magic beans, and these 3 magic beans equate this to everything that you do. So if you have 3 magic beans, what I do and what I always tell people to do is you eat one, keep one, and plant one. And that way, that magic's never going to die. It's going to keep going around, because when you plant, another one grows, and you can eat, and you can plant, and you can eat, and you can keep, and just keep doing thinking and doing in circles. And I think that it will be a great way for you to go forward and multiply this circular journey of ours. And so on that note, I would just like to say, I hope this has helped, and there are questions. And so if you have any questions you want to ask me, I am here.
Thank you so much, Nkwo. That was really insightful. Does anyone have any questions for Nkwo?
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for making out time and just coming up to talk to us. Of course, many of us know you, and you're a very inspirational person. And I feel like this is a very good opportunity for me to put this question forward, because I wanted to give it to Zara, but I think you're the best person for this question. So
Sure.
yeah, so I work with fabric a lot, and most of my dyeing processes is done in-house because I'm really just curious about certain fabric designs, and I just feel like, okay, I can play with it by myself without really having to involve other people. But then I've really been wondering the dye water disposal process. Like, I just feel like, is this even okay? Is there a way this can be recycled? Is there a more sustainable way this dye water can be used? So my question is, do you have any idea on how the best way we can dispose of this dye water? I mean, this is Nigeria. We don't have a lot of water recycle plants. I don't know. Is there a link, a way, an idea that you can share with us?
Okay, so for me, the best way would just be to only use natural dyes, and because a lot of these chemical things that we use, there's really no way that I know of filtering the water. It could be a project for you. It could be a research project. And this thing that I'm talking about, collaboration. So maybe there's some company outside, in the global north or something that has ideas. You can talk, you can, come up with things together. So this is the thing of working in circles. Work with other people to solve the problem. I've been asked that question a lot, and to be honest, there isn't any way. Even when you use indigo, which is just natural dye, there's still runoff. It's not toxic, but it's not always very good for the water. And so for me, at this point, we're kind of really cutting back on dyed fabric because I can't find a very sustainable way to work with the water that's left over. So, but I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, Eki, that was a really great question. I'm really glad that you asked that. Thank you, Nkwo, because Nkwo and I have had this conversation as well, and she said that she's cutting back on her dyeing because she can't find a solution. For me, that is a solution, right? Cutting back on it completely. Mm-hmm. But I want to actually have 3 points, and I'll be very quick. The first thing is that natural dyes, yes, natural dyes is an option because then even if you throw it into the ground, it's not doing anything bad or destructive. But natural dyes are hard to scale, right? It's difficult to scale. So that's something that you'll do, but you'll do it in small batches, right? And that's an option. The second thing I wanted to say is I mentioned someone called Mei Ling Loko, who's an architect, and we had a conversation in the summer, and she was talking about how in Ghana they had hired her to come and think through this solution, right? And so what she did is she went to this textile waste facility, and she, again, researched online and found that in Asia they had used moringa, right? I'm sure you guys know moringa, to filter the water, right? Again, they've documented this. So here she is in Ghana, able to find this as a resource. So she tried the moringa process. She got the moringa byproduct from a friend who had this coffee shop, and then she got that. She used it and it worked. But what she found in the end is that what happens when you use that is that it separates the water, right? So it cleans the water. You have all the good water at the top, and at the bottom you have all the junk, right? All the toxic waste. And then she says, what she realizes is that, where do you throw this waste, right? So,
exactly.
So what happens is that we're trying to fix the symptoms. We're not going to the root to resolve the solutions. And I think that was really important, is that we're saying, what is the solution for this problem? But it's like, what is the problem? It's the wrong question, It's what is the problem, right? And I wanted to say another thing actually to add to this, which is that if it's a solution that we can resolve by ourselves here. A friend of mine is really bothered by the waste issue, so she's come up with a business plan where she's going to import this machine, which will help her go across Nigeria and find waste, right? And take all the waste to Nigeria and pretty much export it. People are doing this internationally. She's going to be one of the first to do that here. Obviously, she's lucky to have the funding to buy the machine, but the idea is that it's something that didn't exist. She thought about it. She put a business plan together. Now she's seeking funding for it. This is something that can happen between a number of people in this room. If we think about, this is a problem for us as dyers. There's, I'm sure, many people in this room doing Ajira dyeing. How can we come together to come up with a solution, create a business plan, seek funding? There are machines actually that exist, because I've done a bit of research on this. There are machines that exist that can filter the water. So after dyeing, it filters it, cleans it out, and you can use the water to dye again. So obviously these machines are going to cost some money. There's going to need someone to build a business plan. There's going to need someone to, come up with a market study and know who are the brands that are going to need this. But it's doable. It's possible. So those are some points around that question. But it's such a good question because it's top of mind.
So what happens to the toxic runoff? What do you do with that stuff? Where does it go?
So what she was saying is that they can use them. They can create bricks. They can create things with them.
Okay.
They are the flocculants, is what they're called. They can create things with them, but those things are still toxic, right? It's still a brick wall that's toxic. So imagine if you were doing with natural dyes, then you can have a clean base. So essentially, it's not a great. I mean, it's a solution, but it's not a perfect solution. in essence, right? Because you're still dealing with toxic elements.
Hello, good evening. My name is Obianuju. And, we all know the fast fashion industry, part of the reason why that is huge is because they're looking for cheaper products as well as they're also looking for volume. Now, coming to the sustainable fashion industry, to practice sustainable fashion, fashion designers are encouraged to produce fewer collections. Now, how can the sustainable fashion industry match production vis-a-vis the growing population? Well, talking about Nigeria now. I also ask how effective is the impact of the work of the sustainable fashion industry on the environment, or are we just going to say that little drops of water make a mighty ocean? Because we are having a growing population issue, and we are unable to match that production for sustainable fashion to, of course, match that population. So, on the long run, how do we combat the issue of fast fashion and then at the same time help the environment, of course, become better? Then, secondly, I know that during the conversation, this is the second question, sorry. So, during the conversation with a popular fashion designer in Nigeria, and I had a conversation with him about going into sustainable fashion, and then he said the issue of affordability is still a problem because you only find the people in the upper class and the upper middle class are the people who are able to afford what you would sell. So are you looking at building a social enterprise or building a sustainable business that is going to is a sustainable fashion business that will be sustainable on the long run? So I think someone like Nkwo Onwuka can respond to that because, of course, they've been in the industry for a longer time. Thank you.
I can sort of answer. Okay, so the first question, you were talking about this mass production, fast fashion, and how we can match it. So, when I'm talking about sharing, co-creating, one person doesn't have to do all of it. There are so many fashion designers in just Nigeria, even just in Lagos and Abuja, there's so many. And so if each person produces as much as they can produce, but there are a lot of designers doing it, then you match the scale. You have to really go into the machinery of fast fashion to know that it is a bad thing. Half of it is unused. If you go to the Atacama Desert in Chile, it's full of things that some of the things have never been used, but they're dumping. So they overproducing because it's cheaper. And it's also cheaper for them in the global north to dump their old clothes or unwanted clothes in developing countries than to find ways to get rid of their waste. And so it's not a good thing, and it's not a model that we need to follow. And so we need to find a way for ourselves to match the demand. And I feel that in Nigeria, we're sort of doing quite well because there's so many different levels. Everything isn't for everyone. And there's so many designers, and they're not all expensive. They're all range from this fast fashion prices to, super luxury, and all the way in between. And there are things there that people can buy, everyone can buy. That's one thing. Another thing is the second-hand. Can I remember the second question? Something about affordability. So I think there's tons and tons of second-hand clothing that is dumped here in Nigeria. There's tons of it. So why can't designers or clothing brands or whatever you want to call yourself go there, take what's there, find a way to use it, turn that challenge into an opportunity to create jobs, to create clothing? It's there. Keep these things in flow, circles. So it comes in, it's dumped, and instead of it getting thrown out to landfill or incinerated or dumped in the sea, use it to clothe the masses of humanity that we have in Nigeria. So I hope that answered your
Yeah,
question.
that was really good. I just want to add one more thing, which is kind of similar to what you were saying, is that I've heard someone say in the past that makers of fast fashion, I agree with Nkwo, 100% overproducing, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, they want you to believe that they're producing it because there's nothing else for the masses to buy. It's not true. Because you find that, as Junko said, a lot of the pieces coming into Nigeria they still have like H&M tags on them. They haven't been worn, right? So clearly there's an overproduction issue, and clearly there's a problem where and this is why I really like the OR Foundation in Ghana. If you guys are really interested in the second-hand clothing industry, look up the OR Foundation, the OR Foundation in Ghana. What they're doing, and again, there's an EPR policy in the paper to read in the resource. But essentially, what they're doing is they're trying to make these producers of fast fashion to pay a fee, right? So for every unused garment or for every item that they produce, they have to pay a fee. And if you're asking someone to do that, it means that they're going to begin to take responsibility for the nonsense that they're creating, right? And the problem that I find is that you have these producers who, they have the stats, they have the data. These are big corporations who know that every year, X amounts of pieces don't get sold. So for me, it's like, why do you go ahead and continue to produce? It's not a, to answer your question, it's not a, let's clothe the masses. The masses can't afford it because the masses are buying products coming from China. It's more a financial play. It's a money-making play. It's a capitalism play. So, but it's also not a black and white answer. It's these are my thoughts on it and Nkwo's thoughts, and I think that it's a very valid question, and it's a question that has multiple layers to it. And then your second question about affordability, I completely agree with you. I think that access, like for example, if you go to the market and you want to buy linen is maybe 3,000 naira a yard compared to cotton or compared to polyester crepe that maybe is 800, 900. So of course, I'm telling you to go and buy the natural fiber linen, but it's double the price of what is the cheaper, it's like, the non-sustainable option. I don't have the answers, essentially. I think for me, what I think is important is that we always choose the best option, right? I think, as Nkwo said, if a number of us are choosing the better option, I think in the end, that ripple effect, I like when you talk about ripple effects. If a lot of us are doing the right thing in different circles, eventually it makes a mark. But it's easier said than done. I completely agree that sustainable products are much more expensive than high street products, fast fashion products. But I think just because it's more expensive, it's not something that should deter us from doing the right thing.